Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bottom Line Me podcast. I'm your host, Ann Allard. Today, we're going to shed a little light on a growing threat in our digital world, mobile phone spoofing. Imagine receiving a call that appears to be from someone that you know, only to find out later that it was a scammer. Well, my guest today recently fell victim just to this, and she's here to share her story with us and the impact that it had on her day, some of the lessons she learned, and perhaps some tips and ideas that she might share with you after having been a victim of phone spoofing. So let's take a moment to welcome my guest, Tracey Brown. Tracey, welcome to the Bottom Line Me podcast.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today.
Oh, well, I'm really looking forward to learning more about this. I mean, I think 5 years ago, I didn't even know what the word spoofing was. But today, it's a new world. There's no question about it. Well, before we get started, yes, before we dive into our topic, why don't you take a few minutes to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do at Old Republic Title?
Certainly. My name is Tracey Brown. I work with the New Hampshire, Vermont team. I'm the business development manager. So I deal with the agents. I'm kind of like a rep, their agency rep, but I do a little bit more. I work with the underwriters. And I started with Old Republic Title back in 2019, just before the pandemic. So
oh my!
It's been a fun ride. And
baptism by fire, huh?
Yes, I work with a great team, and I like dealing with the agents, and client service has always been one of my strong suits. So it works out well, and here we are.
Oh, that's why it's so important to have your phone all the time, isn't it? So.
Oh yeah,
yes.
The phone is your lifeline for sure.
Exactly. Well, as I mentioned in my opening, you recently were the victim of phone spoofing. Tell us a little bit about what happened, how it happened, when you first realized that you were being spoofed.
Well, spoofing in of itself means to trick. And most people think of phone spoofing, and the typical one is where somebody a scammer will impersonate a trusted individual or bank. Financial institutions come to mind, police come to mind, because if you get a call and it looks like it's your bank or the local police department, you're very likely to have that conversation. You're going to pick up the phone, you're going to talk to them, you may divulge things to them. So that is more typical of what people know for phone spoofing. Mine was a little bit different. It was outbound spoofing, where the scammers took my phone number and blasted it out somehow to over 1,000 people. And it was as if I was calling these people. And what happened was my phone in the course of that Tuesday started ringing, and it didn't stop until 9:00 at night. And I logged over 1,000 calls, texts, jammed my voicemail. And what was happening were people were thinking that I was legitimately calling them, only I wasn't. And I stopped answering the phone and put it on mute. And of course, about a half an hour into this, I started thinking, oh, this seems weird. And I started thinking of spoofing, but I was more familiar with it in terms of, say, somebody trying to call me to get, in fraudster scammers, they're looking to get data, they're looking to get money, they're looking to get information. So I think that's more typical. In my case, I couldn't figure it out exactly what they would want, because they weren't using my number to bring calls to them. And I'm not a financial institution. I'm not a high value individual in terms of, I don't have access to anything. So redirecting my number to somebody else wouldn't really give them anything. So it was very strange. I called my carrier. There wasn't much they could do. Again, I put the phone on mute. I was not answering calls. People were texting. It was just a completely wild ride. And I did some research to try to understand what happened and why it happened. And I found out that this outgoing spoofing serves a purpose, because there was nothing that they were going to gain from me other than I have a good phone number. I have a number that's not a spammy number, and my number's not on a block list. So the reason somebody like me would get targeted, or somebody whose phone number is clean, so to speak, is because they throw it out to a lot of local, because they'll see a local number and people are likely to answer it because it is local. And what happens is they look for pickup rates for people, say, oh, how likely are they to pick it up? And while they're doing that, it could create a problem for my phone number, because now my phone number could get blocked. So the more good numbers that they can do that with, the frees them up to use other numbers to, say, conduct an actual scam. So I was kind of like a tool in a bigger wheel. It's like, oh, let's use this phone number, and they do it all the time, to create a problem. It's like they're trying to say, oh, let me throw some shade. She's the bad guy, and I'm over here, and I'm really the bad guy, but I don't come across as the bad guy because it's her. So that's kind of how that played out. So it was a little bit of a twist in that respect.
Nothing I've ever heard.
Yeah, no, it took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah, what you're describing, and in the first part of this is very typical. Somebody's trying to scam you. But yeah, I was scratching my head thinking, what's to gain from messing up your day, which is, I'm sure, what they did.
They did. It was, the thing is, it was very frustrating. And I had actual agents trying to reach me. And luckily, they know to call, they know to text, they know to email. And I was grateful that they chose to email, because I could get my emails, because the calls were coming in so rapidly that dialing out was almost impossible. It was like whack-a-mole, like, oh my gosh, how quickly can I get out an outgoing call, because the numbers were coming in so fast, it didn't have a chance. And I had one agent in particular that had been working on something and very much needed to talk to me. And when I finally got through to him, I said, I am so sorry. I apologize profusely. And I told them what happened, because I didn't want them to think I was ignoring them. And they know that. I've been dealing with them for 6 years now. And my agents know that I'm a responsive person. And that's, we all have our things, and they know that I'm somebody that does. So this whole spamming, spoofing thing threw that off for me. And it's funny, because I'm not somebody that gets very rattled, but I have to say, by the end of the day, I was thoroughly rattled, and it was very frustrating. And I found myself saying, I could have thrown my phone into the ocean, because I thought, oh my gosh, this just doesn't stop. And so when I got a hold of Verizon, who's my carrier, they're like, well, there's not much we can do. You can report it to the FTC. You can wait it out. Again, other than call blocking and spam filtering, which I had on, but it didn't catch, it was catching them as it went on. And this went on for 3 days. The next day, I think I got just under 500 calls. The third day, I got 250 something, and it petered out, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is, if it didn't stop, then my only option would have been to get a new phone number, which I didn't really want to do for so many reasons. But that's kind of what happens. And in some ways, that would suit the spammer, because they burned my phone number. I go and get a new number, and maybe they'll do it to me again. And that's kind of what it is. It's being used in a bigger, again, it's like I was part of a bigger plan. They had nothing to gain from me. They weren't looking for my financial information. They weren't looking to scam me. They weren't trying to get me to invest, that sort of thing. But they were utilizing a resource that I had, a good phone number, to, throw shade and to increase pickups in other areas, because people will, and all the numbers were local. So I live in Mass. I'm on the Mass-New Hampshire border. So all the calls that were coming in to me were Massachusetts or New Hampshire exchanges. So very local. Whereas if it was a number from like California, it wouldn't have resonated with me. But wherever you are, I think there's the sense of, oh, it's a local number, it must be good. So I think that's why they do it. The call doesn't come in. If a scammer's trying to scam you, you don't look down and say, oh, it says, hey, I'm trying to scam you, please answer the phone. It's not quite like that. It's like, oh, let me appear like I'm a trusted number, or even a number close to somebody else's that because you're likely to pick it up. And in my case, with my job, Monday through Friday, say 9-ish to 5-ish, I'm more likely to answer the phone, because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm technically on the clock. So you never know where a call could be coming from. So you don't want to be unavailable. Although my feeling is I've learned because of voice cloning and AI and a lot of stuff and scamming, I don't answer the phone unless it comes up and I know the exact number of the person comes up on my dialer. I let it go into voicemail because if you were to call me and I don't know your number and you say, hey, this is Ann, well, I'm going to call you back. And nobody's really going to be upset that I didn't answer the phone. And I do tell people a lot of times, maybe unless you know, the better thing is to not answer the phone. But, and I think I've learned most of that because in my 6 years here, I've been focused wire fraud, seller impersonation fraud, vacant land scams. Because of so much of fraud impacting our industry, that's become my niche. And I talk a lot about that to the agents. So my awareness has grown. My husband jokes, he says, can we have dinner where we don't talk about this stuff? And I'm like, no, I just learned about a new fraud today. And he's like, oh no, stop. So it's kind of funny. At the end of the day, it's like, oh my God, how many are there out there? And I said, I don't know. Every day I wake up and I find something new, which is crazy. So I'm always thinking about that. And, at the end of the day, I wanted to share my story because, hey, maybe it could happen to somebody else and let people know what's happening, because I think it's important to share our stories and to let people know, what can you do? In this case, you can report it. You can, get a spam blocker filter, which a lot of us do have. Or if it doesn't go away, you end up getting a new phone number, which seems like very drastic, but there's not a lot of options. And knowing that their goal was just to use your phone number, not to get to you, but to use you in a bigger scheme, so to speak.
Did it fill up your voicemail box too? I mean,
oh, it did. Yeah. So when I was in the sales meeting, what was happening is it was filling up my text, and it was kind of funny because you see, you get text, it comes up, you get 1, 2. It was crazy, and I was trying to delete them, and then I said, oh, let me click on the voicemail, and it was. So I was as fast as I was deleting voicemails, they were getting filled, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And that's how the emails started. You got people emailing me saying, hey, I tried to call you, I tried to text you, and I couldn't leave a voicemail. And I said, of course not, because, it was, believe it or not, getting 1,000 phone calls from 9:05 to, I think, 8:10 p.m. is a lot of calls. They were coming in. I think I counted like an hour. It was like 1 hour was like, it was just the wildest number. I said, how fast is this happening? Because my ability to call out even a program number where I had to say, click on your name and hit send, I couldn't do that fast enough. It was like, oh,
and
how quickly
why was that? Because a
out?
call was coming in?
Yes, a call was coming in. I've never, and if I wasn't trying to call out and I had the phone sitting there, it was just like one would end. There was almost like no space in between. Picture, you're trying to, get in between two things, and you couldn't even get a slice of paper in there. It's like there was just no opportunity to get out. And I think that's what led to my frustration, because I was trying so hard to be able to first call Verizon or to call my agent back. And it was, typically when I go to the sales meeting, we leave our phones there, and I leave it on vibrate. No one wants to hear a phone ringing. But it was so crazy that I put it on mute, because vibrate itself, the thing was just like bouncing on the table.
It was going off.
This is going to work.
Yeah.
It was just too much. So I said, okay, put it on mute, but you could see it. And then I kept going, okay, let me click off and try to delete text messages, try to delete the voicemail, because I'm panicking. I'm like, somebody needs to get a hold of me, and they're not going to be able to get a hold of me. Now, I understand. I'm not in the medical field. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not going to save a life. But I'm in the service industry. And at the end of the day, when people can't get a hold of you, and there's a
consequence.
Out,
exactly.
There is. And, I have some agents, I'll talk to them, and they'll say, can you take me off the ledge? And I'm like, oh, of course. I'm like, sometimes it's just having this person that will listen to you and go, okay, I'm going to help you, just that, because I think a lot of times, like when we reach out, call somebody because we need help, maybe it's something to do with our internet or something, and we get somebody on the other end who's not willing to help or not able, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're just not, responding to us, we get frustrated. So for us, and for myself and my team, the goal is to deliver, stellar customer service. And part of that is being responsive and, talking to people and finding out what their issue is and how I can help, and being honest too. Like if I know the answer, I'll give you the answer. Sometimes it's like, that's a great question. I don't know. Somebody called me today and said, "Hey, do you have does ORT have videos that explain, tell the difference between the basic policy and the enhanced?" I said, "I don't know. Let me look." So I got off the thing and I went into the Easy Market, and we had 3 of them. I'm like, this is great. So we downloaded them, put them, set them up for them, emailed them, and I said, "Let me know if you like these, and if you do, I'll create an Easy Market account, and you can do these." And she's like, "Oh, I love them." And that was one of those things. Like I didn't know the answer, but I'm like, "Oh, let me check." And then I said, if we didn't have them, maybe we could create them. But it turns out we had 3, and who knew? Because you try to know everything that you have. It's like, oh, I'm in the store and I'm in the thing and all this stuff, because these are, that's just one snippet of something that somebody needed. Was it a big deal? No, but the fact that I was very excited. Within 10 minutes, I found it. I'm like, oh, this is great. But that's the kind of thing. And in the role that somebody like myself plays, or the other reps, we're all about the service. We're I jokingly say, because when people say, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm paid to be nice." I said, because
I'm paid to be nice. Very good.
I know, that's what I say. I'm like, "What's your job?" You meet somebody like, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "Oh, I work for ORT." "Well, what do you do?" I said, "I'm paid to be nice." And they go, "No, for real?" I said, "No, kind of." I said, I'm not underwriting, so I said, yeah, that's kind of how I wrap it up. And I like to talk about fraud and scams as often as anyone will let me.
Well, isn't it
or
interesting
LinkedIn
that
will let me
it
post.
is something that you like to talk about and that you end up being scammed yourself? I mean, it's just incredible. I got to ask you one more question about how this all happened. So the reason you couldn't make a call out was because calls were coming in to you so quickly, and the calls were they in response to um the scammer actually calling out all these
I,
other numbers?
I, I don't know if somebody was sitting there calling, or a group of somebody's, or they had a program, maybe some computer generated thing that could call you, but they didn't really want to talk to you. Their goal was to get you to call me back. So that piece I'm not 100% sure. Um, and it makes me think, because of the rapid fire of calls, that either they had a lot of people doing this, meaning, like 25 people, say, lined up and going, "Okay, start dialing numbers." And what was happening is my phone number was showing up on your caller ID. That's why you called me back, because you're like, "Oh, Tracey, you just called." Well, in this case, if you knew me, you'd say, "Tracey, you just called me." But it was like, "Hey, your number called up." And I knew that because the very first one, I was on the phone with somebody from ORT. And as I was hanging up, I had no choice but to answer it, because I clicked to hang up and the call came in. And they said, "Hey, you just called me." And I said, "No, I didn't. I was thinking I was just on the phone." And I said, "No, I didn't call." It came up in the thing. And I said, "No." They said, "No, your number came up." I said, "Well, it couldn't have." And I said, "I need to go. Goodbye." And then as I was hanging up, another call came in, and it was the same thing. Like, "Oh, your caller came up." And I'm like, "No, it didn't." Now I'm like, okay, this is weird. I hung up, and it was enough time for me to hang up that the calls were coming in, but I was not answering. But I was reading the text, and the text, they were starting out, "Hey, you called me," or, "Hey, I got a call from number. Are you looking for landscaping? Are you looking for daycare? Are you looking for, massage therapist?" It was a variety of stuff. So these were all, yeah, it was interesting. I think my favorite was the tattoo artist. "Hey, are you looking for a tattoo?" I'm like, "No, not today." Yeah. Well, it was just random. But that's what it was. They were getting a call from me, but it wasn't from me. And I don't know if it was a series of phones or computer generated, or however
Oh,
else,
interesting.
well, however it
Well,
was.
you're
So
usually the one talking people off the ledge, and that day you needed somebody to talk you off the ledge, I bet.
yeah, no, yeah, it was, yeah. Let's put it this way: the poor people at Verizon got an earful, because I'm like, "Fix this!" I'm like, "You need to fix this. I need to, because you're frustrated, and you couldn't stop. Like, I didn't know how to stop it. And the bottom line is, there was no way to stop it, other than shutting my phone off.
Right.
So that
Well,
was kind of it. And
speaking of bottom lines, we've got a lot of them here, but as you know, I always like to end our conversation with a bottom line, and I think what were the lessons learned, or what would you suggest or tell anyone that's listening to this that they could do to prevent it, or what they should do in the event that they became victim to it?
I don't think there's anything you can do to prevent it because I think it is random. I think what you can do is not answer the call. Don't pick up the phone. You can notify your carrier. Ensure you have a good spam filter. And if it persists, the bottom line is you're going to need a new phone number. And I think the biggest takeaway is, as much as like I've had people say to me, "Oh, you know a lot about frauds and scams," and I said, "Well, more than I did yesterday." But somebody said, "Oh, you would never get scammed," and I said, "I have as much chance to get scammed as anyone else. There is not there. None of us are immune to clicking on the link, answering the call for a variety of reasons because we're human. We're very capable of being socially engineered, and I think that as much as we try to be careful and stop, think, try to figure it out, don't react to the urgency and all those steps that we learn. I think we're human, and in the moment, in the heat of the moment, we our guard gets let down, and we do react. And I think the bigger issue, the most important takeaway, is to tell the story. Let people know what happened. Because
Exactly.
too often we feel like, oh, no one's, this hasn't happened to anybody but me. And I think the fraudsters and the scammers count on that because if we're not having the conversation and we're not sharing the story and we're not talking about what's out there, then people don't realize it's actually out there. So I think doing that, and I do try to do that. I'm on LinkedIn. I share a lot about frauds, not only within our industry, but just general because it's pervasive everywhere so that, maybe create the awareness. But I don't think anything is 100% preventable. And there are a lot of people who've come forward who are, working in cybersecurity that have shared their stories about being scammed. So none of us are immune. And we have to, maybe, be kinder to ourselves and say, oh, why did this happen to me? And don't feel bad about it. And when people say, hey, they've had this experience, maybe they clicked on the link, maybe they started dialoguing with somebody and they got involved in a romance scandal. Rather than look at them and make them feel bad, maybe we're just a little bit more compassionate and realize that fraudsters, they're good at what they do. They're very good at what they do. They use the technology and they use the psychology, and that's how they do it. And they make a lot of money. So it's a lucrative business. That's the bottom line. Fraudsters make a lot of money, and that's why they're doing it.
Well, I guess so. Well, I think the other great bottom line here is sharing stories, and I want to thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your story with us. I think, I mean, I'd never heard of it, but I'm paying closer attention to all those things now, and having you share this story is one of the ways that we can help everybody out there. So thank you very much, Tracey. Much appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ann, for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. All right. And to our audience, once again, thank you all for joining us. Until we meet again, let's all continue to learn, grow, and hopefully prosper. Thanks.